I remember 18 years ago when we first came to Spain. How about that? 18 years. We came in 2000, so a little bit over 18 years. And so we came 18 years ago, and lo and behold, Spain didn't realize what they were having us when Dana and I came with our 4 children. But one of the greatest things that I belong to, a great mission, is that they assigned some mentors. And whether they like it or not, they had to accept us. And, and the mentors were the exact people that we needed into Kevin and Karen Prevost, one of my dearest colleagues and friends. Our children grew up together. Our children were in each other's weddings. And so we have been very honored throughout these years to be able to have a mentor, but yet a friendship relationship. So everything that is of good nature is because of them. Everything that is bad because the flesh of me comes out. But I'm really thankful that Kevin and Karen have come. We were in Alicante, Elche, when we first came. They were in Alcoy, about 45-minute drive, and they were our closest missionary colleagues there. And so we really, during that time, of course, have developed a friendship within our children, their children, and now both of us now work in the ministry here in Madrid. They work alongside on the Red Box plus other ministry, and we're just delighted to have Kevin and Karen here. I've asked them to come and share, and I'm just yearning for a great treat. Can we give a warm welcome to Pastor Kevin? That's right.
Thank you. Good morning. Great. If you have your Bible, let's look in Joshua chapter 1. It says that it's on 28 minutes, so I need that reset to 30 minutes. We're going to read here Joshua, starting in Joshua 1, and I'm going to try to read it fast here. This is what God's will to Joshua. He's going to explain Joshua what his will for him and how to walk that will out, or how to live in that will. So here we go in Joshua 1. Now it came about after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord, that the Lord spoke to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' servant, saying, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, cross this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I am giving to them, to the sons of Israel. Every place on which your sole of your foot treads, I have given to you, just as I spoke to Moses, from the wilderness and from Lebanon, even as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, in all the land of the Hittites, and as far as the great sea toward the setting of the sun will be your territory. No man will be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you. I will not fail you or forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people the possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which my servant Moses commanded. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you will have success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do all that is written in it. And then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. For have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. I saw your lema, your theme for the year, your mind be renewed. You know, we have to think the way God thinks to be able to walk in his will. Could I have a little glass of water? And, well, here we see God's will to Joshua. You're going to be the captain. You're going to bring the people across the river, and you're going to conquer the enemies, and you're going to distribute the land. That was God's will for Joshua. But he also, what he does, he explains to Joshua how he can walk this will out. And he gives a number of requirements, different requirements. I'm sure that you caught a number of them. And but we're only going to concentrate on one of the requirements this morning, where he says, be strong. And he says that to Joshua 3 times, be strong. Okay? And we're going to pray that God renews our mind and help us to understand how to walk in God's will. You know, we need to think in a different way. Be strong. Now, you know, for a long time in English, in the English Bible, it says, be strong. And for many years, I always thought to God, how can you be strong if you're not strong? How can you command somebody, be strong, if they're weak? Didn't make any sense. Well, one day, I was reading this in Spanish. And in Spanish, it's very clear. Es fuértate, right? How many know Spanish here? Not too many. Es fuértate. Well, what that means, so I looked it up in Hebrew. This is what it means. In Spanish, just with one verb, you understand exactly what he's talking about. But in English, be strong, this is what it means in English. It means exert yourself. It means try harder, put forth all your effort, right? Give it all you got. Be determined not to give up. That's what to be strong means. And so how can we do this? So God asked Joshua to be strong, to give forth, to really try hard. I want to show you how this really works, because what we're talking about here is our part in walking with God. How does that happen? So I brought something here this morning. Weights, right? This type of weight, what you do, you just do this, right? That's all there is to it. So I want a real strong girl to come up and help me. So we'll ask Noemi to come up. Or Naomi, yes. So Naomi to come up and help us. So you watch what I do, okay? This is the exercise. You just have to pick it up and do this, okay? That's all there is to it. So can you do that for me? You can do it. Okay, just a minute. Now, I want you to try again, okay? I want you to try really hard. Go ahead. Lift it up. Stand straight up. Lift up. Now put all your effort into it. Come on, put your effort into it. Look at that. Down. Let's try again. One more time. Come on. All your effort. No, one hand. All your effort. Look at that. Great. You did it. Thank you. Let's give her a hand. Now the question is, did she lift that up or did I lift it up? I'm playing God's part. Who lifted it? This is what we really have to come to grasp with, how to walk in God's will, our part in God's part. A lot of times I think we have a wrong idea about the will of God. Because we got this idea, well, if it's the will of God, everything's just going to work out okay by itself. As if we don't really have to do anything. No, it's God's will. If it's God's will, it's all going to work out. Well, that's not really true. Not exactly true. Let me ask you this. Will God's will be done in your life if you don't try really hard to obey it? Do you see what he said to Joshua? Be strong to obey everything, or really try hard to obey everything I tell you to do, right? And let's go to another verse, and this really helps us clear this whole subject up. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I think here it helps us to understand this a little bit clearer. 2 Corinthians 12, starting with verse 7. And you'll see how it talks about the power of God. Paul speaking, he says, because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, for this reason, to keep me from exalting myself or becoming proud, there was given me a thorn in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me, to keep me from exalting myself. Concerning this, I implored the Lord 3 times that it might leave me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather boast about my weakness, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me. Therefore, I am well content with weakness, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, with difficulties, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. This is almost the exact same thing that we see happening in Joshua 1. In Paul's situation and him trying to walk out the will of God. And what the very important word to understand here is this word grace. My grace is sufficient, right? This word grace, a lot of times we think grace means favor, the favor of God. And it does at times, but the more times when grace is in the Bible, what it means, the synonym for grace is power, right? You can see it right in the verse. My grace is perfected, right? My power is perfected in your weakness. My grace is sufficient. Probably one of the most important words to understand in this verse here, these verses that Paul's talking about, where he says his grace is sufficient. You really have to understand what this word means. It means sufficient, right? When I was helping Naomi, did I give her all my strength? Or did I give her just sufficient to help her lift the weight? Just sufficient to help her lift the weight, right? Let's suppose that you're going to swim from Gibraltar to Ceuta, right? You're going to swim the Straits of Gibraltar. A lot of people can do it. It's only 8 miles. I'm sure Lisa Harding could do it, no problem. You know, it's 8 miles. It's not that far. A lot shorter than going across from London to France, right? Or from England to France. So you decide to swim across, all right? So you start out, and you're about halfway, 4 miles. You swim 4 miles, and you're exhausted. And you're starting to drown. You are going to drown. You're going to lose your life. And you know it, and you start to call out to God, God, help me. Help me, God, I'm drowning. I can't go along. I can't do anymore, you know. And so when you call out to God, he helps you. But God doesn't send, usually, he doesn't usually send a cruise ship to rescue you. Usually when we call out to God for help, when we start to drown, he throws us something like this, right? A lifesaver. Because this is sufficient to keep you alive. You can cross the other 4 miles with this, right? It's sufficient to keep you alive. And that's usually how God's grace works. You know, we'd love for God to, you know, to transport us. We're thinking, God, just transport me like you did Stephen, you know, from one place to another. You know, that doesn't usually happen. You know, Stephen had to walk everywhere else he ever went. He only got transported one time that we know of. You know, because we got this idea of God's grace. We got a wrong idea of what grace or the power of God, how the power of God works in our life. So why does God, instead of giving us a cruise ship, why does he throw us a lifesaver? Well, for a very simple reason. We saw it in what Paul was saying. On a cruise ship, we're not conscious of our weakness. Usually on a cruise ship, we're sitting in a nice lounge chair, eating olives and queso manchego and, you know, having a Coca-Cola and getting a suntan. We're not conscious of our weakness, right? But with this, all the time, we're very conscious of our weakness. We know we can't let go of it. If we let go of it, we stop depending on this, we're going to drown. And that's what God's grace does. He gives us sufficient grace so we'll never forget how weak we are. Because Paul says, you know, I had this thorn in the flesh, his whatever that was, doesn't really matter. What matters is that it kept him humble. And God says, no, I'm not going to take that weakness away from you. Why? And he told us, so I won't become proud. If God sent you a cruise ship every time you were in trouble, well, you'd be really proud, wouldn't you? You think, oh, Christianity is just easy. You don't have to put forth any effort. And it's not that way. God's grace doesn't work that way. I'm going to, by the end of this sermon, I'm going to hit this one area. Be strong in a lot of different ways so that you never forget. Because we need our mind renewed in what it means to walk with God, how that happens. And so that's why we never let go. God, just sufficient to keep you alive. You won't drown. He won't let you drown. He won't fail you, but he's not going to transport you to Ceuta, okay? So you always be conscious of your weakness. Well, God commands us to be strong, to really try hard because he will be with us. Did you see that in Joshua? That's what he always says. Try really hard, be strong, because I'm going to be with you. When God called me into the seminary, into the ministry, I had to go to seminary. And, in my first week, I remember first week, I had about 5 classes. In one class, Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. We had this textbooks we had to read for class. But outside class, he gave us 5 other textbooks we had to read and do a report on. And I'll tell you, I was overwhelmed. I thought, man, this is too much. Because, in high school, I didn't study at all. I was a long-haired hippie. They swear to God, they party every day, It's amazing that I ever graduated from high school, and I just felt overwhelmed. Like, I can't do this. And as I was thinking about that, the Lord gave me a verse from Psalm 68:35. God gives power and strength to his people. God gives power and strength to his people. And it's because I knew God was with me that I put forth a lot of effort in my studies. And I graduated. I did pretty well. But I had to put forth a lot of effort. I put forth a lot of effort because I knew God was with me. He was going to help me. Right? When God sent me to Spain, to come to Spain, I was 28 years old. I had to learn Spanish. And, most people have to try, most missionaries have to try really hard to learn Spanish. Not everybody has an easy time like Karen and Jacob Bach. Most of us have to really try hard. And it's because I knew God was with me, I really tried hard. They asked me, how long did it take you to learn Spanish? I said, 32 years. I haven't stopped. You always keep doing what God calls you to do. Imagine God saying to Joshua, go fight your enemies, conquer them. They're bigger armies than you. They're stronger than you. And I'll wait here until you get back. That'd be ridiculous. He said, go conquer your enemies because I'm going to be with you. Right? And he's with us. God knew it was hard. He knew what he was telling Joshua was going to be really hard, really difficult. But it was always this promise. But I will be with you. I will be with you. Put forth all your effort. Be strong. So we see this word here, be strong, be strong, be strong, 3 times. When you see God says something 3 times, it's got to be really important. Or we have to be, maybe it's because we're really slow up here that God's got to keep telling us. This is how it works to walk with God, how his grace works. If you want to see God's will accomplished in your life, you're going to have to put forth a lot of effort. It's just not easy. This is that requirement. As he says, be strong to obey every word I tell you. Right? That is one of the requirements to see God's will fulfilled in your life. Nobody walks in the will of God without a lot of effort. It's not easy. To really follow God is not easy. Right? It's like when God throws you a lifesaver, right? You're drowning. How many have felt like you were drowning and trying to follow God at times? Like, this is too difficult. I can't put up with it anymore. Well, God throws you a lifesaver, sufficient, but when he throws you that lifesaver, he says, you have 4 more miles to go. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. Right? Like the movie. Who knows from what movie that comes from? Just keep swimming. Yeah, and that's what you have to do. We have this idea of, an easy peasy Christianity. You have to know a lot of English to catch that one. But, it's just not that way. If you try really hard, you can count on God helping you. But if you don't try hard, there are no promises in the Bible that God will help you, that he'll give you his grace. Sounds pretty hard, but that's the way it is. You try to find one. You try to find one that says that he was going to help if you don't try really hard. It's not there. You can't find it. Forget about this easy Christianity. It does not exist. Even in salvation, we say, think about salvation for a minute. We say, it's all by grace. It's all by grace. You know, as well, in the sense, it is all by grace forgiveness. You can never do anything. You can never earn God's forgiveness. You'll never do enough good things so that God will forgive you. But you know what Jesus said about salvation? He says, make every effort to enter through the narrow door. And he's talking about salvation. He's talking about getting into heaven. This is exactly what he says. Be strong. Make every effort. And I remember a Muslim man coming under great conviction of sin. I mean, great conviction of sin. There's no doubting he knew that Jesus was the only way that he could be forgiven. And I asked, well, what are you going to do? He says, but my family, but my family, I'll be cut off. Well, you have to choose. Make every effort, right, to get in. When God tells you something, you can be sure that he'll give you the grace to carry it out. Always. God really watches over his word to carry it out. I've never really come to see how important this is for God, that more than I have in this last year. When God speaks to you about something, he is really, really concerned about carrying it out. And he will. He won't let his word fall as long as you put forth your effort. Like Moses, Moses, go talk to Pharaoh. I'm going to set the people free. Moses, man, I'm not eloquent, I can't speak very well. God says, I will be with your mouth and help you speak. Right? Well, at times God asks us to do some things that are really hard, really weighty, if you want, really hard, really difficult, maybe impossible. So that's why it takes a lot of effort not to lose faith and faint. Catch out how he said that to Joshua. Be strong, don't faint. And when God calls you to things, one of the efforts we have to really put forth is faith in God. No, God told me to do this. I know I'm in God's will. To faint means to turn back. No, I can't. It's too hard. I'm turning back. Right? Like it says in Hebrews 10:36, you need to persevere so that when you have persevered, or so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he promised. You think you're going to receive God's promises without persevering? How many times have we heard, just believe God, it's a promise, he'll fulfill it. Well, there's always our part. Persevere. Now, a lot of times among Christians, we hear this, it's all by grace, right? How many times? It's all by grace. It's all by God's grace, right? As if we don't need to put forth any effort. People, it's not true. Of course, it's all by grace. Think about this. I could never get over to Ceuta without this lifesaver, right? This is the grace of God. So when I get there, it's by the grace of God. I got to Ceuta by the grace of God. It was all grace. Did I have to swim that other 4 miles? Yes, I did. That was my effort. But the grace of God kept me alive. So when we say it's all by grace, that's what we're talking about. Without God's power and help, I could have never lifted it. I could have never fulfilled it. Like Naomi, right? Was it all by grace, by Kevin's power? Or did she have to put forth effort? So that's when we say it's all by grace. Even Paul says that, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have to put forth effort. Without God, it's impossible. We can't do it. She could not lift that weight without my help, right? God wasn't going to conquer Israelites' enemies by himself. If they wouldn't go forth in battle, God wasn't going to move. God moves with us. He gives us his strength as we obey what he's told us to do. Well, listen to what Paul says about this. He says, I worked harder than all the apostles. You can look this up later. It's in 1 Corinthians 15. Yet not I, but the grace of God that was with me. So, did Paul work hard or not? But it was the grace of God with me. You see how it's the two things that go together. God rewards those who earnestly seek him. Do you expect God to give you things, to reward you, to make himself known to you without earnestly seeking him? It won't happen, right? It won't happen. God has to reveal himself to you, but he won't do that unless you put forth your part. You have to earnestly seek him. Right? We see this truth all through the Bible. But, I think in our fleshly mind, all we want is, easy peasy Christianity. It's all by grace, all by grace. God's going to do everything. You want this exact same truth we see Paul telling Timothy in 2 Timothy 2:1. Just so you think this is just of the Old Testament. Timothy, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. Do you see it? It's the exact same truth. Make an effort, give it all you got. Putting your faith and dependence on the grace that's in Christ Jesus. And I've come to learn in Christianity, kind of where there's kind of two camps, if you will. Either we, as Christians, we're going to put forth effort, really try hard, or we're going to complain about our situation. It's usually what those two things happen. One of those two things happen, right? For example, a lot of you can probably connect with this. It was my responsibility to do the paperwork to get our visas to come to Spain, right? How many of you have done that, done all the paperwork for visas, right? It's not something I love to do, okay? And I've done it many times. But the last time I was really complaining about it, it's just such a hassle. Oh yeah, well, hey, you forgot this paper. Well, why didn't you put it in the list of requirements, You know how it is, right? And I was really complaining. And one day the Lord just spoke to my heart. He says, Kevin, you have no right to complain. When he said that, he brought this verse to my mind. It's Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Right? And I realized I had no right to complain because I had an access to the strength of Christ. He was going to help me. Okay? And I know a lot of times we use this verse like, I can do all things through Christ. I'm going to be the next Messi or, whatever. And that verse has nothing to do with that. This verse is so used incorrectly. So often it has nothing to do with Christ's strength so that you can do what you want. In the context, Paul was writing from prison. And what it actually means, he says, I can be content no matter how difficult my situation is. I can be content in any situation because Christ's power is available to me. I don't need to complain. Okay? I remember I was living in a certain city in Spain, and it was a dirty city. It wasn't very pretty. And I remember so clearly one day walking down the street and thinking, man, this place is dirty. Why don't people pick up their garbage? Why do they have to throw everything on the street, And I was just grumbling and complaining. And as I was doing that, I felt the grace of God lift off me. And I realized it. And then it's as if the Lord spoke to my heart. Kevin, I'll give you grace for whatever I've called you to do. Just don't complain. When we start complaining about our situations, our difficulties, at work, at home, wherever it might be, God's grace lifts off of us. God promises to give us grace, strength for whatever situation. Doing paperwork for a visa is not like a real spiritual thing. This is my calling in life, No, it's an everyday, well, no, not every day, thank God. It's one of my responsibilities. I remember when I was working in the car factory, and the atmosphere in a car factory when you're working on like an assembly line, right, in cadena, and really bad, and boy, man, I was just full of the joy of the Lord. And I had a number of people come up to me and say, why are you different? Why are you different? And I realized what they were saying, you don't complain like everybody else. How about you where you work? How about the difficulties that you're going through? Are you complaining? Or are you dependent on God's grace to help you? We have that. That's why we have no right to complain. The unbelievers, they have a right to complain because they don't have the strength of Christ available to them. But we do. But we have to choose. Going to put forth effort and depend on His grace, and He'll help us through it. Or we're going to complain. Do we hit it from enough angles, what it means to be strong, put forth effort? Because as we do that, God gives us His grace. His grace is sufficient. He will never let you drown out there. You start complaining about your situation, and I've seen people be Christians, and they end up fainting, means they turn back. They turn back. Is God speaking to your heart? Areas of your life? To help you understand how the grace of God works, He'll get you through. Right? Nobody likes, when God called me to preach, like I told my high school was, I didn't want to have anything to do with public speaking. I mean, I was a mess, man. I was so lost, and nobody likes to feel weak. But a lot of times God lets us feel weak so that His power can be manifested in our life. So we won't get proud. When things are easy, we usually become more and more proud. Let's just take a time to reflect. God speaking to your heart this morning. As the musicians play, we got just a couple minutes. Why don't you just close your eyes between you and the Lord, and if you need to confess and ask Him forgiveness for complaining in certain areas, or you felt like, man, you can't go on anymore, you want to turn back, remember, God will give you the grace to continue. It might not be transport, it might be just like this, a lifesaver. But He will keep you alive, and you will get to the other side. No matter what you're going through, no matter how difficult it might seem, you will get to the other side. God's grace will see to that. He has the power to make that happen. Have faith. Don't complain, right? Put forth your effort, counting on His grace.